Good afternoon. Welcome to the Midday Mull for Monday, the 7th of March. With Robert Murray McShane, we continue reading through Paul's second letter to the Corinthians, today chapter 6. I was struck by verse 14 and following, where Paul writes, "Do not be yoked together with unbelievers." Now, I've heard that sentence used to say to Christians, you may not marry anyone who's not Christian. Now, I'm not convinced that that's what Paul's talking about. There might be wisdom in that, and certainly I would advise couples coming for marriage that every single level of difference that you have adds complexity to your relationship. And goodness knows relationships are complex and difficult enough as it is, but it's not impossible. And I know many couples where there is a difference, and one of the couples will come to church regularly and be committed, and the other will be an atheist and never set foot in church. I know, unfortunately, some Christian couples where both are deeply committed and yet their marriage is falling apart. So I don't think Paul's saying Christians can't marry non-Christians. I wouldn't advise it, but that's not what Paul's talking about. Because he continues, for what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what is the fellowship? What fellowship can light have with darkness? Scripture doesn't talk about marriage as a yoke. And I think it's talking about our involvement in the world in general, because Paul continues and refers back to the people of Israel, who God challenged to separate themselves from the surrounding nations. And then he quotes from the Old Testament, where God says, I will live with them and walk among them. I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore, come out from among them and be separate, calling the people of Israel to be separate from the surrounding nations in order that they could maintain their religious walk with God, that they wouldn't be corrupted by the surrounding religions. And he continues, touch no unclean thing, and I will receive you. I will be a father to you, and you will be my sons and daughters. And so God calling the people of Israel to be different from the surrounding nations. And we're challenged not to cut ourselves off, but to live in the world, because we can't cut ourselves off from the world. Maybe you can go off and live like the Amish do, but that I think is counterproductive. How do you reach out? How do you grow the kingdom when you're living off in a little enclave on your own? We need to be in the world. We need to be part of the world. We need to be, as Jesus and Scripture says, we need to be in the world, but not of the world. And so our challenge as Christians is to live in the world and pray that God will use his Spirit in us to influence and affect the world. But at the same time, pray for protection, that the world will not influence and affect us. And in that way, I believe we fulfill this challenge that Paul gives. We separate ourselves, that we're not caught up in what the world does, but we live in the world, do what God does, and live as lights in the darkness. Be challenged by that, and know that as we do it, God is with us, enables us, and blesses us.